All right, we're gonna start, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone. Thank you all for coming out this afternoon to learn more about Sudan and the events of the recent uprising. My name is Ala Suleiman and I'll be moderating today's event. To give some background, I was born and raised in Sudan and moved to the United States in 1999. For the last 20 years, my family and I have been visiting Sudan frequently and kept close ties to our homeland. With that being said, the recent events of the Sudan uprising have been very emotionally involved experience for my family and I. And because these events have hit close to home, we felt a great sense of obligation to bring awareness to our struggles through educating others and hopefully inspiring people to contribute to creating a better Sudan, inshallah. The intention of this event is to aid that education process, and I would like to thank everybody that made today possible. Special thanks to Peace Stars Academy for providing the space for us tonight, as well as the Sudanese Association of Northern California for sponsoring the event. Before we begin, just a few announcements and housekeeping reminders. To better facilitate the event and to respect our panelists, we ask that you keep your phones on silent and remain mindful of young children who may create noise or disruption. Restrooms are outside the door to the right if you need to use a restroom. So you go outside these doors to the next building, and that's where the restrooms are. And finally, please hold on to your questions and comments till after the presentations. We'll have a Q&A at the end. And with that, we'll get started. For some opening remarks, I would like to welcome Mohammed Shimmo, the president of the Sudanese Association of Northern California, to the stage. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you, Ala, for putting this event together. Before I start, actually, I wanted to give some background and some historical context about Sudan. I think as Sudanese, we don't understand enough our history. Sudan actually is being called the cradle of civilization. It's where the Kushan kingdom actually started. That was 8,000 years ago. The Black Pharaohs actually ruled all the area until south of Turkey, of what's known Turkey today. Sudan has been mentioned in the Bible and in the Torah actually for more than 30 times. The first time it was basically mentioned in the book of Genesis, when the mention of the creation of the Nile, that's like a paradise river. It's also mentioned in the in the event when the people in Jerusalem needed some help against the Assyrians. So the king Tirhaka, who was the greatest king of all the pharaohs, actually helped the Jews against the Assyrians of yesterday. The story of Musa, most of you guys might not know that, but the story of Musa actually took place is what known today as Sudan. When the mother of Musa has to put him in, to rescue him from the Pharaoh, she had to put him in the Nile. They said that she wrapped him in a planet basically called Halfa. Halfa is what's known as one of the biggest cities today in Sudan. It's called Halfa. There are many cities in Sudan today, like Ibri is basically a direct translation of Hebrew. The area in the northern Sudan, where one of the tribes called Mahas is basically called Sakot. And that is basically the area where, it basically means the shaded area. And that is the place where the Israelites basically used to graze their goats. So the history of Sudan goes for a very, very long time. And the struggle of that country, however, is very recent. Sudanese always basically look for their own freedom. They toppled three dictatorships in the last 50 years alone. And now they are basically trying to reclaim themselves. They're trying to stand up for themselves against the oppression of the tyrant rulers. And now we found our way through a peaceful process. It's been the longest uprising against a government for almost 7 months now. The youth, people from all walks of life, from all tribes, stood together and united, regardless of their differences, regardless of their background, united, seeking freedom, justice, and equality. And that's what we are attaining today, and that's what we will continue to attain tomorrow. I would like to thank all the speakers who joined us today. I would like to thank Bكرى, who is an engineer who went to Khor Umar High School, to the University of Khartoum, and who has a PhD and worked for great companies like Boeing, and now he's a director of strategy. I would like to thank Imam Abdul Malik, who is the Imam of Auckland Masjid. He been always the sounds of truth, and the expression that I always get from him speak against power. And I would like to speak Gail as well. I thank her as well for her effort and for her sympathy with what's happening in my country. She had a documentary about Sudan, about the genocide in Darfur. And I would like to thank all of you guys as our guests today. Thank you for coming, and thank you for having sympathy and empathy with the struggle of the youth in Sudan who are trying to reclaim their freedom and their path to justice.
Thank you, Mohammed, for the history and the brief background on Sudan. We will now begin introducing our panelists. Our first panelist is our beloved teacher and community leader, Amir Ali. An alumni of San Francisco State University, Abdul-Malik Ali graduated with a BA in both communications and Black Studies in 1982. He was a leader in the movement at SFSU to gain accreditation for the College of Ethnic Studies, which stands today as the only college of ethnic studies in the country. A community activist affiliated with Masjid al-Islam in the inner city of East Oakland for 27 years, Abdul-Malik Ali served 20 years as the Amir of the Masjid and educational director of the Masjid al-Islam School. He's also a well-known motivational speaker, particularly on California college campuses. He's a product of the African American Islamic tradition, being heavily influenced by the Holy Quran, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, aka Malcolm X, Imam Jamil Abdullah al-Amin, formerly H. Rap Brown, and without further ado, Amir Ali.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله أحمده وأستعينه وأستهديه وأستغفره وأؤمن به جل وعلا ولا أتركه وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. It's an honor to be here as an African American Muslim. One of the places that we kind of like have a serious attachment to is the Sudan. So it's just an honor and a privilege to be here. Let me get right to it, inshallah. If you ever get a chance, go back and look at the Time Magazine issue of February 28th, 2013. On the cover of it, it says, "The generation changing the world." Okay? And this is dealing with the situation in Egypt with Mubarak. Now, what they did in this article, if you go to the center of the magazine, it talked, what they did was, they went to almost every country in the Muslim world and gave the percentage of the population that was 30 years old and under. All right? And I'm just going to name three, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Morocco, 57%. Algeria, 58%. Sudan, 67%. All right? Now, this is 30 years old and under. Now, if we were to start at 35 years old and under, it would probably go up to like 65 or 70%. So of the 1.6 billion Muslims in the world, 60 to 65% of them are 30 years old and under. 35 years old, if we start at 35, 65 to 70% of this ummah are 35 years old and under. And so Time Magazine called it a youthquake. So I'm gonna steal that. All right? Because what we are witnessing is a youthquake. Now let me remind you, several months ago, there were major demonstrations in Morocco, mostly youth. A few months ago, May, June, there were major demonstrations in Algeria. Now Morocco has a king, all right? And of course we know the problems with kings, right? And Islam verifies that. Allah talks about in the Quran that the wealth of a country the wealth of society should not be concentrated in the hands of a few. That's in the Quran. And so they were protesting this, the king in Morocco, and then Algeria doesn't have a king, they just have a president for life. And then when he dies, his son becomes president for life. But he's not a king though. And so he's getting his son ready to become president for life, and there were massive demonstrations in Algeria, mostly youth. Mostly youth, all right? Then we go to Sudan, right? And as my wife and I were looking at the pictures, she said, mostly youth. Exactly. Because we're talking about 70 to 75% of the population that is 35 years old and under in the Sudan. We are witnessing a youthquake. And what is the major weapon that they're using? It's very critical. In 1967, when he talked to Dr. King, they asked Dr. King, "Do you still believe in nonviolence?" He said, "Yes." I'm paraphrasing here. He said, "I still believe in nonviolence, but what I'm advocating is massive civil disobedience." So Dr. King didn't believe in tearing nothing up, didn't believe in burning nothing up. He believed in shutting everything down. And at the end of his life, he was working on a MCD campaign that would shut down the major arteries in America. We see massive civil disobedience used in recent times. The people in Iran got rid of the Shah with massive disobedience. They had no guns. The youth in Egypt got rid of Mubarak, not his machine, but got rid of Mubarak through massive civil disobedience. Did we find that in Islam? If you go to the inauguration of Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, he said, paraphrasing again, that when I do something that's consistent with, Allah and His Messenger, follow me. If I do something inconsistent with Allah and His Messenger, do not obey me. That's called civil disobedience. And so these young people understand right? They're not tearing nothing up. They ain't burning nothing up, but they are shutting everything down. Because when the people do not cooperate, there's nothing that a society can do if the people decide not to cooperate. And that's an ingenious strategy that they're using. So we are witnessing a youth quake. Now here's the other elephant in the living room that we have to talk about very quickly. We are living in a period of Islamic revival. Don't get it twisted. We are living in a period of Islamic revival. And it is an honor and a blessing when Allah chooses a generation to live during such a period. So you young people, put the pieces together. An ummah made up mostly of youth, and we are experiencing an Islamic revival. I saw an article the other day where it said in England they shut down 500 churches because people just weren't participating. At the same time, they opened up 423 masajid. There is an Islamic revival taking place. It is. It is. And at the same time, my respected youth, be very careful, because the Western media is going to define this. The Western media is going to give a definition of this. The Western media will probably say something to the effect of, well, you see, the reason why you're having so much problems here is because your leaders are trying to follow Islam. That's the problem. Implying, once they get away from Islam, then your problems will be okay. And we saw that with the Arab Spring. Remember the Arab Spring? The Arab Spring? And one of the things that they did was they separated from what was going on in terms of Islamic revival. And they were able to do it until the elections came. Because once the people were allowed to vote, guess who they voted for? And once the elections happened, they could not separate the two. Now, I'm not saying that the young people here are calling for Islam, so on and so forth. What I am saying, though, that the vision that they have for their society is consistent with Islamic principles. Who was the genius military person, a man that we had in our history? A genius. Khalid ibn Walid, right? Never lost a battle. He got to a point where he was almost a mythological figure. The Persian general asked the Muslims, is it true that God sent down a sword from heaven and gave it to Khalid? The man was almost like a myth type thing, right? Now, as much of a military genius as he was he ever considered to be the caliph? No. There was never any discussion to have Khalid ibn Walid as a major military genius to be the leader of the community. All right? Understand that as they try to redefine this, don't let them make you lose confidence in Islam. All right? What these young people are seeing is that the wealth, for example, the resources are concentrated in the hands of a few. That's not allowed. Go back in our history. As soon as we started becoming rich, what started happening? The standard of living of the people began to get better. Why? Because the leaders were not attached to the wealth. You can't take wealth and say, this wealth belongs to my family. You can't do that. Because anytime you have a king or a dictatorship, that means the political and economic wealth is going to be in the hands of a few people. So what do the rest of the people get? No opportunities, no chances for growth and development. But the real way that it's done is that leaders are not attached to the wealth, and the wealth of the country is designed to make sure that the people's standard of living is increased. And so remember in the Prophet's masjid, when they used to sleep on the platform, Abu Hurairah and them, because they were poor. Did Abu Hurairah die poor? No, he did not die poor. Abu Hurairah died rich. Why did he die rich? Because as the Muslim government started becoming more and more richer, they made sure that the standard of living of the people increased. And the young people are saying that is not happening. What they want, the vision that they have for their society is one of justice. There must be social justice, there must be political justice, there must be economic justice. And that's consistent with how, in terms of the Islamic view of a society. So don't let the Western media redefine what this is about. This is about justice. And we will continue to see this youth quake We'll continue to see it, and it won't be just in the Muslim world. It won't be just the Muslim world, but it is in the Muslim world, and for us old timers, we got to listen to our youth. We have to listen to our youth. Listen to them, right? We did our best to train them, to build, right? Well, now it's their turn. It's their turn. You old timers, remember when we were in our 20s and 30s, like a long time ago, right? We were in our 20s and 30s, right? We were active, weren't we? We were active. We were active. Well, check it out. It's their turn now. It's their turn now. You know what I'm saying? So we should support them, you know, the best way we can, give them our wisdom and so on and so forth, but it is their turn now. And so you youth, this Islamic revival is riding on your shoulders. Do not lose confidence. Do not lose confidence in this deen. The type of society that you want is totally consistent to what this deen requires.
Thank you for the inspiring words for our teacher, Amir, the Melek. Our second panelist for today is Ms. Gail Donsky. Gail Donsky is a retired social worker who has worked in adoptions, foster care, a pediatric outpatient clinic, and in private psychotherapy practice. Since retirement, she has been active in multiple social justice issues, including the anti-genocide movement. She has organized events in the Bay Area as well as a New York event, the Judgment on Genocide and International Citizens Tribunal for Sudan. She is the producer of the short documentary Faces of Genocide that examines the culture of cruelty that has allowed the shameful succession of genocidal atrocities. It includes interviews with survivors of genocides of the 20th and the beginning of the 21st centuries. She was also the recipient of the Jewish Community Relations Council's Honorable Tom Lantos Memorial Award for Unsung Heroes. Please help me welcome Gail Donsky.
Thank you. And thank you for having me here. I can't believe I have to follow you. I'm not like him. And I want to tell you, I'm really happy that you finally said that in addition to Muslims, there are other religions and so on, and it is the youth of those religions and non-religious. You know, there's a real movement toward justice. Thank God, because we have one of the most horrible governments right now, right here. And anyway, the film I produced, it's a short documentary, and it is not just of Sudan, it is of all the major genocides in the 20th and 21st century. And we do have a trailer of the movie that we can show whenever. And unfortunately, in the trailer, the Sudanese survivor had not yet been filmed. So you won't see the Sudanese survivor in the trailer. A lot. Should we do it?
Yeah, I can play it now.
Okay.
كده but it's not the same.
You don't have to.
Because they wanted to use it to bury the bodies that had been executed.
It's okay. This film, all 32 minutes of it, will be in San Rafael on July 23rd, and there will be a reception for guests, and there will be a panel discussion after, and anybody who would like an invitation, because we're doing it by invitation, because it's in a theater, just write your email on one of these pieces of paper and give it to me and I'll send you an invitation. That it's Tuesday night, July 23rd, and you're welcome to come, and we're gonna have a reception and so on. Sorry about this. I became involved in the anti-genocide movement in 2003. And that, of course, was when the movement to stop the genocide in Darfur started in this country. And that movement was unprecedented in the amount of resources that went into the movement, the monies, millions of dollars. Hundreds of anti-genocide organizations were started in cities and campuses in the United States, and some of them abroad. Celebrities got involved in the movement. There were many rallies and protests during those years, like 2003, 2006. We had boycotts of businesses doing businesses in Sudan, and it was an unprecedented movement, but we didn't stop the genocide in Darfur. We were not successful. Maybe some humanitarian resources got to some of the refugees, but we were not effective. And for me, I couldn't understand what could have we done, could we have done something that would have made a difference to what was going on in Darfur. And that led me to study, to read, to talk to scholars. I went to a couple of genocide conferences, just sort of searching and searching. Why? Why did these things happen? And how do you stop them once they do happen? And one of the man from Rwanda that you saw on the screen, he became a friend, and he said to me, "You have to read the book by Daniel Shiro called Modern Tyrants." And that book really impacted me in terms of the perpetrators of humanitarian crimes and genocide. They all have a lot in common in their personality. Unfortunately, our current president has some of these traits as well. In doing eventually I started doing the film, and all of this stuff began to shed a very faint light on where the solutions might lie. But first, in understanding who the perpetrators are, is this sounding funny? Is it coming through okay? Okay, sounds funny to me. The leaders of genocides are typically tyrants and demagogues, and they have a lust for power and greed, and their actions are totally devoid of any concern about morality, justice, empathy, compassion. They utilize fear, hate, resentment, dehumanization of the other, and class warfare. And no act is too brutal for these men, and they are men. I don't know if any women genocidaires. No act is too brutal for them to inflict on their own citizens, innocent men, women, and children. Eventually, in the process of doing all of this, I came to believe that whatever solutions might emerge will have to be global. They will involve an international institution much more effective than our United Nations, and an international law that has teeth. And that law is rigorously enforced. And any solution must ensure that no political leader can kill and torture his own citizens with impunity. And the punishment and the cost of doing so must be harsh, it must be uncompromising, severe, and it must be guaranteed. Now, one of the things that I want my movie, hopefully, will be something to educate people more, to be aware of genocides and crimes against humanity. And I'm hoping that it will be distributed to schools and churches and synagogues and Holocaust museums and so on. And I'm hoping that some of the people that watch the film, especially the young people, I'm talking to you, it will spark creative, out-of-the-box thinking about what are the solutions. Now I'm going to come to Sudan. I am totally no expert at Sudan, and I'm trying as much as I can to stay up on what is happening. But from my point of view, there have been a lot of successes in this movement. The fact that Bashir, who has been on the throne for 30 years, that he isn't there anymore is remarkable. And just as, I forgot your name, it says, Aduma, I'm sorry. Just as he was saying so eloquently, the movement is so smart. It's young people. There are a lot of professionals, and very importantly, a lot of women. And the movement has been cohesive. They haven't divided. They haven't fought in different factions, and just as you said, it is peaceful. It is peaceful. So, in addition, one of the successes is it's maintained international support. My feeling is, or my concern is, just like we described the leaders of the perpetrators of humanitarian crimes, a concern is people in the movement who maybe get a deal with the military or something, that their desire, their greed, or their desire for power might split the movement. So, that's a concern. Hopefully that won't happen, but that would be a concern. If the movement goes as it seems to be going now, in regard to my film, this would be one of the models, what is happening in Sudan, for how to deal with a tyrant who is perpetrating humanitarian crimes and genocide. And so this hopefully could be a model or a playbook for the future, for future civilians when they are fighting the injustices in their homes. Thank you all for having me here.
Thank you so much, Ms. Donsky, and I'm so sorry about the video. If, with your permission, we can share it with the crowd, or is there a different way of having it?
Send it to you.
Okay, yeah, I have it. Yeah, so I can send it to whoever is interested to watching it. We'll have a sign-up sheet here. Please add your email, and we'll send it to you, inshallah. I apologize for that. Our final panelist and our keynote speaker is Bakri Ali. Bakri Ali is a Sudanese-American social activist living in Connecticut and working in the aerospace industry as the Director of Strategic Planning and Business Development at Collins Aerospace. He has been engaged for several years in advocating for the people of Sudan and in raising public awareness about the many issues facing the country. Since the start of the Sudanese uprising in December 2018, he has focused on collecting donations from Sudanese people and their friends around the world to support medical care for those wounded by the security forces and to help families that have lost a loved one or suffered property damage and a loss as a result. This initiative has been organized under the umbrella of the University of Khartoum Alumni Association in the US, a nonprofit for which he volunteers in on the financial committee. The response has been overwhelming from around the world, and Bakri, alongside the association, have raised over $700,000 in donations, which has allowed the provision of food, medical supplies, and sanitation for the thousands of protesters at the Army headquarters sit-in. Currently, Bakri is working on ways to provide sustainable sources of income and support for those affected by the events of the revolution. Please welcome Bakri Ali to the stage.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So glad to be here, and excuse me if I feel more comfortable speaking standing up. I'm an engineer, that might be an engineer. And it's a tough act to follow, Imam Abdul-Malik and Sister Gail. Thank you very much for being here today and for talking to us about what you just talked about. Very touching words, very moving, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the movie. Is it going to be available on the East Coast?
Anywhere anybody wants it.
Thank you. So, what I tried to do today is give a background of how we got here. Where did we come from? How did our revolution in Sudan start? By a youthquake. That's a beautiful word, by the way. And how we got here, and where do we go from here, inshallah? And what I've done is I put together a few slides, and excuse me if the flow doesn't make sense. I didn't get a chance to work on the slides until last night, like everybody else nowadays. I have 8 to 10 hours of screen time every day, okay? Just responding to messages, following what's happening in Sudan, and answering the calls. And then in the few hours that I get, I try and get things done. So for some of the people from Sudan here, some of this may be redundant and maybe even boring. But I would argue that it's never boring to go back and see how we got here. Some of the things that you may see here may be painful, may stir some unpleasant memories. But we have to keep in mind that we have people who lived through all the pictures, all the videos, everything we see here. So our inconvenience is nothing compared to what those people went through. So many things happened so that we get to where we are today. If you have been following Sudan for the last few years, you may know that in 2013 there has been an attempt for a revolution. In 2016 there has been an attempt at a civil disobedience. And in both cases, we lost lives, but we did not succeed in removing al-Bashir or achieving any of the goals that the people demonstrated for or started a civil disobedience for. So what is different in 2018 and 2019? You may be wondering. In my own opinion, what's different is this, what is happening now. In 2013, we were all here. We were all witnessing what happened in Sudan in 2013, but we did not act. The people from Sudan who were living outside of Sudan watched what was happening, did not really get a chance to get involved, did not get a chance to actively advocate for Sudan. But as they say, we'll learn from our lessons. So alhamdulillah, this time, when the revolution started, we were all ready. And we all, I describe it as when you have a playbook and you give out the pages and everyone took their page and did exactly what they were supposed to do. The young people, the women, Sudanese abroad, Sudanese inside Sudan. So I know we're still in the midst of all of this and it's not quite over. That's why I called it a revolution in progress. I don't think we have completed the mission yet, but I think we're so close, closer than ever in our lifetimes to achieving true and real change in Sudan. And everything that Muhammad Kumu mentioned about Sudan, the fact that we're a country of culture, we're a country of ancient history. We used to dominate, we used to rule wide areas of land. And I think people who come from that type of group of people, those genes just remain in you, no matter how removed you are from that history. So I think what we're doing here, with the help of all our friends from around the world, is we are being Sudanese. So let me take you through some of the slides here. If you can click on the next slide, please. I think we have already heard a few things about where Sudan is and who are the people of Sudan. And I would like to thank my friend Mubarak from Seattle, by the way, who, I thank you very much, Mubarak, for putting some of these slides for me, because I told Mubarak if I have to prepare slides, I'll probably have 1 or 2 slides, so why don't you help me? So these awesome slides. Sudan, as we all may know by now, is located in the northeast of Africa, neighboring many beautiful African countries, but also sitting in a very troubled neighborhood, many hot spots. If I start pointing to hot spots on the screen, I'd probably spend half an hour on this slide. But what I should point out about Sudan is it's the land of the beautiful. It's a beautiful land. It's a land of beautiful people. And I say this as a Sudanese, and I know I'm biased. I cannot be non-biased. But just look at our revolution. This is a revolution that has been going on for 7 months. That's over 200 days. And no one protester of the millions who protested against the regime shot a bullet. No single protester. Tell me about a nation that can see so much brutality and can see so much aggression and can see trucks loaded with weapons left so that the protesters can resort to violence, but never, no single bullet fired from the protesters. They have been subject to so much horror. We'll see a glimpse of some of that. But it's a land of beautiful people in and out. It's a land of a very diverse population. That picture there shows only just a glimpse of that diversity. And unfortunately, diversity in the past in Sudan has been used as a divide line by the regime that we just are about to succeed in removing. Inshallah, will not be the case going forward, because we know diversity is a strength. And if we can live with each other in harmony, that's good for everyone. It's a land of 40 million residents. This is 2017, so it's probably more now. Economy is not doing well, and we'll see why it's not doing well. But we used to be very proud of the fact that Sudan was 1 million miles, 1 million square miles. As you may know, what happened in 2011 is we lost about 1/3 of the country by the secession of the South, which was another loss to add to the losses, the many losses that we suffered from being governed by Bashir and his mafia. If you move on to the next slide, please. So Sudan gained independence in 1956. This is over 63 years ago, right? Out of those 6 decades, 5 decades have been ruled by military dictatorships. And to me, this is amazing, you know. If you have a country that has been free for 60 plus years, but only experienced democracy or semi-democracy, I wouldn't even call it democracy. I've lived through the 1987 democracy, or what they call the third democracy. And I tell you, it has been a time of constant crises, from crisis to crisis. Because when you have a powerful, corrupt military like the one we have in Sudan, and I say this openly, it's not a secret, they find ways, if they're not in government, they find ways to make it so that they'll come back to government. But this time, we'll make sure that they go out once and for all. As you just mentioned, Imam Abdul Malik, Khalid bin Walid, and that to me, that's a very striking point. The best military leader, he hasn't been part of any transitional military council, he has not been in government, he knew his spot. So 52 years of military dictatorships, and if you move on to the next slide, please. The guy who we just succeeded in toppling, and hopefully will continue cleaning up his mess, is Omar al-Bashir, who ruled for the last 30 years. And during his years, Sudan has seen the most deterioration in the past 60 plus years since independence. Destruction of civil society, introduction of ethnic divisions, loss of the South, secession of the South as a result of his policies, which all aimed at just fortifying his rule. Complete isolation of Sudan. If you mention the name of Sudan 7 months ago, all what you hear is probably some of the words that can come up. Osama bin Laden, maybe, terrorism. Corruption, of course, corruption is given. Darfur. So nothing to be proud of. And it's not what the people of Sudan really want or like. You know, if you tell me about a population that's extreme in a way that sees religion as a way to cause damage and to kill others, and then you see the leadership of that population acting that way, then it probably makes sense, right? It's not acceptable, but it makes sense. But in the case of Sudan, Sudan has one of the most peaceful populations on earth. And don't just take my words for it. All foreign diplomats in Sudan can walk around markets. They don't have to fear for their life. They don't have to have bodyguards. They don't have to have armored cars. Even our politicians, who cause the most pain and the most suffering, some of them actually live among the people and they don't have to fear for their lives. Even during this uprising, we haven't heard of a single follower of the regime who has been attacked, or people attacked their home, their family. So to me, the disconnect between what the Bashir regime represented and what Sudan and the people of Sudan stand for could not be more striking. Corruption, mismanagement, of course, human rights violations in all of Sudan. You know, you mentioned Darfur, Blue Nile, and Nuba Mountains. But I tell you, all the people of Sudan have suffered from al-Bashir and his mafia. And what that led us to, if you can go to the next slide, this is what we got to. And most of these pictures are from recent month. Lines, queues for everything. From cooking gas to bread. I believe that the one on the right, the top right, is an oven or a bakery, and people lining up to just get a few breads. This is water down here, and these guys are making fun of the long line at the gas station. So, of course, corruption, mismanagement will get you here. You're not going to get anywhere. Sudan has one of the most fertile lands in Africa. Has so much resources. It's the country number 3 in terms of gold production in Africa, behind South Africa and Ghana. And both of these are solid economies. But where is Sudan compared to these countries? Not even close. So, unfortunately, all the suffering that happened in Sudan was the spark. It was the spark, and the word spark is very important. The spark is not a fire. So, people have been demonstrating, as I said, throughout the rule of Bashir. But in 2018, December 2018, a couple of cities, and I made a correction here, Mubarak started with Atbara. Atbara is a city in the north of Sudan. I believe that the Mazin was before Atbara on December 13th, even though they did not burn down the ruling party buildings, Atbara, and I tell you, I think if I have an option to move to a city within Sudan, it'd probably be Atbara, because God bless that city. They just know what to do and when to do it. So they started a revolution. It's a city that has a history of union movements, a city of railroad unions and cement factories and so on. So they did not just start demonstrating. They actually went out and burned down the offices of the ruling party, the National Congress. And that's probably one of the few cases where people expressed their anger through something other than chanting or walking on the streets. And I tell you, That was the true spark of this revolution. From there it spread across the country. And the spark was about the lack of almost everything, but what has become of it is, and if you go to the next slide, please. Do I need to hire someone else? Just kidding. Thank you. So it's not, if you ask anyone here, and just watch this, حرية سلام وعدالة والثورة خيار الشعب. حرية سلام وعدالة والثورة خيار الشعب. There you go. So these are the chantings that people repeated in Sudan and around the world. حرية, سلام وعدالة in Arabic, freedom, peace, and justice. Not gas, bread, water, right? So people knew what is missing. It's not about not having necessities, basic necessities. It's about the disease that got us these symptoms. And people of Sudan are sophisticated politically. We had one of the earliest uprisings in the region. People talk about the Arab Spring, starting in Egypt, starting in Tunisia. We had our first civil disobedience, our first regime change through demonstrations in 1964. 1964. This is like 50 years ago or more. So the people of Sudan have a very sophisticated understanding of politics, and immediately they knew if you can get so many people on the streets, then you should ask for your true demands. حرية, سلام وعدالة والثورة خيار الشعب. And these pictures here are very representative of any demonstration that you'll see inside Sudan, outside Sudan. So if you can click on the next slide. See, he's getting better now. So the question is, who is leading the revolution? The short answer is all the people of Sudan. But there are some groups that really stood out. Women. And the women of Sudan throughout history, not just this latest revolution. Even during our ancient histories, women of Sudan have been queens. They have been kandakas. Kandaka is a word for the Nubian queen. They have a significant role in the community, in the society. And if you can use any word to describe the women of Sudan, I assure you, that word is not going to be oppressed, because God bless these women. They're so strong, they're so powerful. And they have shown throughout this revolution that what leadership is about. They suffered the most from the regime because women have really lost a lot. Everyone lost through the ruling of al-Bashir, but women specifically lost more than anyone else. Youth, the youth quake that you talked about, Imam al-Malik, youth have been the fuel of this revolution. And when I say youth, I'm talking about 17 years old, 18, 19 years old. Anyone who visited Sudan during the past few months, you will see that those are the people who have really been on the front lines, who, when we had a sit-in at the army headquarters, these are the people who stayed night after night after night. Some of them hadn't seen their homes in days and days, just sitting there, watching their dreams come true, and having every intention of staying this all the way to the end. SPA is Sudanese Professionals Association, and this is a collection of professionals, lawyers, doctors, engineers. Like every political movement, you need a clear leadership. So they stepped up after the streets started, and they did a marvelous job guiding the crowds, telling them what's the next step, what to do, and people were watching the Facebook, WhatsApp to know what is the next statement from the SPA. And to this day, SPA is the most credible entity during this revolution. FFC is the Forces of Freedom and Change. There was a declaration that was signed in January. It's basically an expansion of the political leadership, the street, of course, and the diaspora. And here, I want you all to look around. And realize how much we all had as a group of people living outside Sudan, how much say and how much support we've been able to provide to make sure that this revolution succeeds. And if you click on the next slide, please. I wanted to highlight a few pictures that show you how widespread the demography of the people who participated in this. Women, this grandmother here carrying the flag of Sudan. This is from today, by the way, in Sudan. So I got a chance to take this and this guy here, this cool guy, look at him. This is not a nation that can be defeated, you know. This guy, look at him, he's having a time, a lifetime. People with special needs, they have been a key part of all the demonstrations. You know, you have a guy like this with crutches that are homemade, mismatched crutches. When you look at a picture like that, you just cannot feel, you cannot but feel you're not doing enough. This guy here, look at him. And this was a video. Throughout the video, he was chanting, he was raising his victory signs. And this guy, that's a video actually. This is from Connecticut. So let me show you some of the beautiful faces we have there. You can click on that face. He's probably what, 3, 4 years old? We cannot hear it. But what he's saying is, Madaniya! That's right here. So he went on for like 5 minutes. He didn't want to let go of the microphone. The guy was having a fun time. And by the way, he was actually reciting, before saying Madaniya, he was reciting one of the poems. And just to give you some of the faces and some of the people who have really been living this revolution day and night. If you go on to the next slide, please. You can watch this forever. Now, when I show this, I want you, everyone in this room, everyone who's outside Sudan, who's probably watching this on Facebook, I want you all to feel proud of what you have done together. I want you to give yourself a round of applause, please. Because we have stood up with our people in every way we can. We provided financial support. This 453K, this is just one of our campaigns. Number 3, just through Facebook and through the University of Khartoum Alumni Association, we've been able to collect over $700,000. Not to mention the donations that came from communities like yours here. And thank you very much, by the way, for your support. And all the Sudanese communities around the world. Yesterday, I had a call from, not yesterday, this morning actually. I made a phone call because a guy from Sweden called me 3 days ago and he said we have a protest and we have our friend from Sweden joining us. So would you mind giving us a phone call and just saying a few words? I did that. This is probably like number 10 or 15 in the last few months. That I get a call from someone in a country that you don't even realize there are Sudanese in these countries. Not just Sudanese, but they're actually protesting, they're raising awareness about what's happening in Sudan. And the day before yesterday, I had a message from a guy called Anas from Denmark. He just texts me out of the blue, and I know my phone number is being all over the place. But I found a message from him saying, my name is Anas. I and a group of Sudanese here in Denmark, we've collected $5,300 US, and we want to send the money to Sudan. Can you help us? So messages like this have been coming in almost every day. The other day I had a call, a WhatsApp message from a young lady called Ala from Australia. She said, I've collected funds here locally, fundraising, and I collected over 4,000 Australian dollars, and I would like to send these over to you. What is the bank account information? A week later, her mom called, and when I picked up the phone, I was entering, I think it was CBS or Walgreens, and she started, Assalamu alaikum, my name is da da da, I'm Ala's mother. I was like, this doesn't sound good. If you have someone send you money and then their mom calls, so I was like, uh-oh. But what she said, my daughter inspired me, and I actually made some cookies and some baked goods, and I sold them, and I have $500 US, and I want to send them to you. So it has been like that, you know. It has been small and big, and we have people. Just give me some time. And we have people. So all the range. We have people who send us letters from their brokerage companies saying this person wants to make a donation from their stock account to help in Sudan, to mothers and young ladies who go out and make cookies and muffins and sell them and send us the money. So everyone, as I said, it's like a book. Everyone took their page of that book and just did what they're supposed to do. We've also done a lot of advocacy and outreach. And you can see there that's in front of Congress in the US here in Washington, D.C. The same thing happened all over the world. You've seen flyers from European cities, from Asian capitals, from all over the world. Wherever people have the freedom of expression, we've seen demonstrations, rallies, advocacy directly to politicians and media, outreach media. We've also offered a lot of hope and inspiration. This is your own Muhammad Shummo right here. This was it was part of a series of live broadcasts that we did together on Facebook, just to tell people what's possible. If you have tech experts like him, Dr. Marwa, everyone knows her. She's a very talented doctor who's she's finishing her PhD in Connecticut. Then you have him, a financial advisor, Muhammad Awad, Nu'man, a law advisor, expert, Professor Nimir, energy and natural gas expert. So these discussions about what's possible if we have a good government, all these people are available to go back and help in making a difference in Sudan. And then we also had our friends. This is Michael Beer. Many people know him from Sudan because of his many live advices to the demonstrators about non-violent tactics, what to do and what not to do. If you're planning a demonstration, what are things to do, what are things to avoid. If you look at that video, it has been shared over 7,000 times. It has been watched over 100K times in one day. This was like the next day after that live broadcast. So this is why we cannot fail. A lot went into getting us to this point. And we have so much at stakes, and we've become really experienced in organizing events like this, in reaching out to our friends who are happy to help, in collecting money. When we started the first fundraising campaign in December, we collected over $104,000 when that campaign ended. The next one, we collected $135,000. This is number 3, and look at how we've been able to collect. This started at the beginning of Ramadan. So in 2 months, we're collecting over $453,000. So, alhamdulillah, we have achieved a lot. We have come so far. That's why failure is not an option. If you can go on to the next slide, please. So what I'll do is I'll take you through a few key dates of how we got here, from December to July. And if you click on the next slide. So April 6th is it's a key date in the history of Sudan. It's when we had our second popular uprising in April of 1985. So April 6th. If you look at this flyer here, this is London, this is Paris, this is Rome, this is Helsinki, this is Copenhagen, this is Geneva, Dublin, Berlin, New York, Washington, D.C., San Francisco. All over the world, people of Sudan have been using the same template to organize and announce their demonstrations. In Sudan, there was a move that actually I didn't know it was that risky until we had the nonviolent expert tell us this was such a high risk. And I'm glad that it turned out to be good. So this is the army headquarters, and what the leadership of the demonstration have decided is we are going to go to the army headquarters and we're going to start a sit-in there. And no one was worried that anything would go wrong. Even us, we were having these demonstrations to support our people in Sudan. We did not think of any danger. Maybe it was in the back of our minds, but you know, the response was overwhelming. And thousands of people took the streets and made their way past the security forces, past all the pickup trucks filled with soldiers, and got to the army headquarters. And that day was significant. So if you go to the next slide, oh, hold on before you go, I'm sorry. As you can expect, if you have a sit-in in front of army headquarters, these are open areas, like parking lots and streets, something can happen, something can go wrong. For sure, the first, second, third nights, there were attacks by the security forces. But guess who stood up and defended the protesters? It was these beautiful faces. Those are soldiers and officers, low-rank officers from the army and the other factions of the army and the security and the armed forces who stood up and actually shot back at the security forces and protected civilians. Even though we lost some precious lives, some of these lives have been lost. The guys in the top row, number 2 and number 3, and this guy here, have been killed, unfortunately. But you know what? There's so much sacrifice that has been given throughout this. So this turned out to be a historical moment. And if you go on to the next slide, please. As a result of that mass sit-in, 5 days later, this guy, Ibn Auf, who's the defense minister of al-Bashir, came out on TV and announced that the Bashir has been removed from power and I am your next president for the next 2 years. Guess what the reaction of the people was?
No.
No. They're not buying that, right? So we cannot replace al-Bashir by his defense minister and call it success. So people continued to sit in. We had more people joining, participating, and as a result, if you go on, actually, before I get to this, Ibn Auf resigned in 2 days. 2 days later, he came out again.
2 days too long.
23 hours.
23 hours.
23 hours. There you go. So it's not even 2 days. Same got back on, right? Anyways, so I think we had the record there. So we replaced 2 presidents in less than 24 hours. So he came and said, I'm stepping down. And then we had a transitional military council that took over. And this is where we are. We get to that. But let me show you some of the beautiful things that happened during the army headquarters sit-in. This became a mini Sudan. Became almost a utopia for the people who are looking for the harmonized Sudan. Sudan that people, regardless of which tribe they belong to, which religion they are, whether they're a man or a woman, they can be treated fairly. They can feel that they're part of something bigger. So for us, the people of Sudan, this is very significant because we did not really have a unifying national experience. Even our independence wasn't truly a fight because I think the British colony, the British Empire got tired by the time they got to us and they were like, you know what, we're just heading back home, have your country back. There was a struggle for the independence. It wasn't as significant as this. So this picture here shows the train coming from the city of Atbara. That's why my retirement city, inshallah, will be Atbara. They sent a train when they felt that the crowds were getting tired, just to re-energize the crowd. Come on in, please, come on in. When they felt the crowds were getting tired, they actually prepared the train, and the train came all the way from Atbara to the army headquarters. This is the Blue Nile Bridge. People from Sudan know this. And I was there, Muhammad Shumu was there as well, when that happened. And let me tell you, this was such a moving moment. When you're there, when you see that train coming at the speed of 1 mile per hour, maybe, or maybe even less, and people on top of the train, sticking their heads outside the windows and climbing on the train, jumping up and down. This was just, it was like living a dream, you know, and the train, when it passes by, all the shaking of the ground, and there were so many people just following the train on both sides of the track. Hundreds, not hundreds, tens of thousands of people following the train on the ground, and everyone was instantly energized. And I came back to the US about 2-3 days after that, and I was feeling super easy about the whole thing, that this nation is not going to be defeated. I was feeling very optimistic. If you go on to the next slide, please. And the same thing, by the way, happened from other parts of Sudan. We had buses coming from Darfur, buses coming from Al Jazeera, from other parts of Sudan. This here is so significant beyond words can describe. These young ladies and young men are Christian Coptics, and they're part of the population in Sudan. And I told you how the Bashir's regime have used any division line they could find to divide us. Religion, ethnicity, anything. So this is during a Friday prayer, during Jumu'ah prayer. The Christian Coptic young men and women were holding a tarp to shade people who were praying. And our friend Bushra made a cartoon out of it, showing, yes. So this is good for the world. This is not just good for Sudan. Religion should not be a division line. It should not, because it's just, to me, it's a personal choice, right? And we have seen people, those of us who lived in the West, we saw how religion can be irrelevant in how you deal with other people. And that's the way it should be. And I tell you, in Sudan, I live in a city of Durman. It's a city that has a large population, relatively speaking, of Coptics. And there's no, before the years of Bashir, religion was not a question, you know. I saw these kids who went to school together. When it's time for Islamic studies, they just go outside the classroom, they do something, and they come back after the class is over. It wasn't, no one even stopped to think about it. So this is Sudan as it should be, and this is good for the world. If you have, in a hot spot like North Africa, the Middle East, if you have religious harmony, imagine what that can do for just the peace between different religions, and all the things that Muhammad mentioned about the history of Sudan, and how we're rich in religious history, and how significant Sudan is for all Christians, Muslims, and Jews. So to me, this is one of the highlights of this revolution. If you could go to the next slide, please. All that beauty. As I said, the Syrian at the army headquarters became a utopia for the people of Sudan. It became a place where people send donations. Donations get sent to Sudan. They are used to buy food supplies, and this is what we had during the month of Ramadan. People eating together, sitting down, enjoying a meal. To me, this is significant. This was the women from the area of Wadi Hawar in Darfur. They brought a caravan of meals, basically, and very classy ladies. The presentation is beautiful. You know, those little covers, they're all handmade. So this down here, this is how people cooked in front of the army headquarters. I know you, and you're probably not eating something like this, but you know what? You would love the food there, because it's not about the food, it's about the environment, about how this got to be what it is. Some of your dollars probably ended up inside that huge pot there, right? I mean, to all the people of Sudan, this became more than just a political demonstration. It became more than just people gathered in one place. So, and you can see the faces. You can see the diversity of the faces. At the same time, we had, go to the next slide, please. We had these guys. The people that took over from, yes, I know. I know, sorry guys. We'll go quickly through this slide. No one likes to look at these faces because, again, all that beauty, all that harmony, all that love, and you come and you see these guys who are only concerned about
تظبط بس
تظبط بس exactly تظبط ثاني وثالث ورابع exactly. So the TMC, Transition Military Council, is made of al-Bashir security forces, the Janjaweed. I'm sure Gail, in your movie, if you cover Darfur, you know what Janjaweed is. These are lawless people who go around killing, burning villages, and committing all kinds of atrocities. Military, and they're all there just for power. So let me save you the grief. Go on to the next slide, please. So there have been very strong regional influences. Sudan is not living in isolation. So MBS was Mohammed bin Salman, and MBZ was Mohammed bin Zayed. Funny guys, really. And God bless the Egyptians for putting up with this guy and seeing his face every day on TV as Sisi. I don't know how they do that, seriously. But Egypt, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, they all have key interests in not seeing a free, democratic Sudan. All they have their own reasons. Sisi doesn't want a repeat of Sudan in Egypt. These two, they care about seaports, and they're causing troubles all up and down the Red Sea, in Djibouti, in Somalia, in Sudan, in Yemen. He cares about his war in Saudi Arabia and in Yemen. And look at the faces that we're sending him to fight his war. The war in Yemen, by the way, if you don't know about it, it's a war between Saudi Arabia and Iran, okay? Let's just be clear about this. It's about Sunni versus Shia, right? Sudan has nothing to do with that war. It shouldn't be happening in the first place. The US should not be sending arms to the United States, to Saudi Arabia. These are the people that we're sending, not we are. These are the people, these guys, Himeti, Al-Burhan, are sending over to Yemen to fight, and they get the dollars, the riyals, the dirhams to stay in power. These are 14, 15-year-olds. These are probably younger or the same age as you guys. So, as I said, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Egypt, they will do anything in their power to keep things in Sudan away from having a true democracy. Because even aside from the war in Yemen, they worry about pro-democracy movement happening in their own countries. And they have real fears about strong national civilian government that may do things that are not in their best interests. But guess what? No matter what they want, no matter what they do, the people of Sudan are winning. Because it's not about what Saudi Arabia wants, it's not about what Egypt wants, it's about what we want as a nation. And it has been shown over and over and over again, regardless of what these guys, how much support they give to the TMC, the people of Sudan are winning this. So go on to the next slide, please. June 3rd, Ramadan 29th. Yeah. It's an ugly day. And I did not include any bloody pictures or any shooting videos. I know that this is like a nightmare for all of us. I watched the events live on Facebook, like many of you did. It was something. There are no words to describe the hate, the ugliness, the cruelty that the security forces, our military, the Janjaweed, all the hate they have against the young people of Sudan, all the things they did on the last day of Ramadan. This is the last day of Ramadan. Tomorrow is Eid. This is, to Muslims, this is like, you know, you can't even kill a bird on a day like that.
Pure evil.
It's pure evil, absolutely. When you compare this to all the love and all the beauty that you saw, and you see that someone can do this to a 16, 17-year-old, it's just beyond description. So even though we're a country of beautiful people, I think we really need to dig deep and find out, how do people like those who committed these crimes, how do they come from amongst us? What happened? What did go wrong to produce people like that? What did go wrong to produce people like the Bashir, like Himeti, like Burhan, like all the Janjaweed? Killing, bodies dumped in the Nile with concrete blocks, rapes, sexual assault. It was just as President Roosevelt said here about Pearl Harbor, this is a day that will live in infamy for the Sudanese, for the people of Sudan. It's a day that's hard to forget. It changed the calculus completely. Before Ramadan 29th and after Ramadan 29th, it's a completely different game. If you go on to the next slide, please. Some of the horrors that our people saw. Just look at this. How much force do you have to apply to cause a bone to shatter like that? Look at these skulls. How much force do you have to use to break someone's skull like that? This is, when I went to Sudan, I visited the hospitals with the team there, and one of the guys gave me this and said, look, this is what they took out of my body. It's bent, this is a bullet, and it's bent. It hit his thigh, hit the bone, broke the bone, and you know, I think there are no words to describe how much hate we've seen in the last few weeks. So, June 3rd, all that hate, all that killing, and we're still finding about missing people. We're still finding how many exactly we lost that day. We're still viewing videos that were shot that day, but because the military immediately disconnected the internet, we're still getting these videos, looking at them for the first time, and it's painful. If you go to the next slide, please. But here's what I want to do. I don't want to leave you with all that hate. I wanted to see some of the things, some of the sacrifices that our young men and women have given. Sameh, Amani, they both lost their right eyes due to a tear gas canister hitting them directly on the face. This is Amani in Russia, after she went to get treatment. Thanks for your donations. But to see someone like Amani smiling, this is Masri, and this is only a few days after he lost his right arm out on the street. This is Bukri, the same injury, both of them college students. If you click on the video on the far right, I just want to show you what your donations are allowing us to do. This is Masri. It's not easy for him, but it's definitely something. He has to learn all his moves. And by the way, we have a lot more pictures and videos, but because we have to get permission from the families, from those young men and women before we can share anything, this is what we're able to share. But this is Masri in India after receiving his arm transplant, and someone's outside. And as I said, he has to learn how to control. He can use his muscles, his forearm muscles, to control the fingers. He has 3 functioning fingers. But that's when you click on Facebook link and make a donation. It may not come clear to you become clear to you immediately what you're doing. But this is what you're allowing the team in Sudan to do. This is what we're able to achieve for these guys who sacrificed and who not just sacrificed, showed so much courage, determination. Bakri was telling me, and he's still in India, receiving the same type of artificial limb. I asked him what happened, tell me what happened. He said, the tear gas came next to him on the ground, and there was his college student. There were people around him, young men and women, and he didn't want it to basically suffocate everyone. So he reached out, took it up, to throw it back at the security forces, and as he picked it up, the thing exploded, and he told me he saw his fingers on the ground. He's 24 years old. So look at the smile on this guy's face. This is someone who will live with this forever, right? So the courage these youth are showing, the strength that they're demonstrating, just is beyond belief. I'm not sure I'll be able to smile like Amani or like Bakri or like Masri if I go through something like this. So that's why we cannot fail. Failure is not an option. All these sacrifices cannot go to loss. They cannot go in vain. If you click on the next slide, and sorry about all the emotional stuff here. So the international outcry that happened following June 3rd was, despite the sadness, despite the hatred that we saw, it was a turning point for the revolution. And we saw many activities from the US Congress, from the European Union, from the African Union. We saw good results of the advocacy that all the people of Sudan have been putting together. And as a result, all these regional influencers, I think they realized what kind of mistake they're committing to assume that they can defeat the people of Sudan using their petrodollars or bribing our military. So if you go on to the next slide, despite no internet for a month, June 3rd, internet was shut down all over Sudan. Internet was the main way of communication between the leadership and the protesters. Internet was the way that people like us, not living in Sudan, can follow the news, can find out what's happening. Despite the loss of internet, despite all the atrocities committed at the end of Ramadan, people came out because the leadership, actually I shouldn't say the leadership called for the June 30th demonstrations. The street was ahead of the leadership in this one, honestly. People on the street, people on social media called for it. June 30th, and June 30th is significant because it's the day that Umar al-Bashir hijacked government in Sudan in 1989. So look at these pictures. These are the same people who were in front of the army headquarters when all the shooting happened. These are all the people who have been cut off from the rest of the world. No internet, no mainstream media coverage. But look at the numbers. Look at that bridge. Look at the crowds. So this happened June 30th, about 2 weeks ago. And as a result, I think it became clear to the TMC, it became clear to Saudi Arabia, to United Arab Emirates, to everyone who was prepping those generals to become the next government, that we cannot fight against this. We cannot. These people are unbelievable. If you go on to the next slide, please. So July 5th, just a week ago, and thanks to a lot of mediation by the Ethiopian Prime Minister and by the African Union, there has been an announcement that there's an agreement reached. And I gotta tell you, this is a very, very complex issue for the people of Sudan. If I say by show of hand who supports this, and by show of hand who is against this room will probably be 50-50, or maybe you know, I'm sure we'll have people who are saying, you cannot shake hands with Himeti.
Yes, of course.
And they have every right to say it. They have every right to say it. There are people who are like, we cannot afford to see our young men and women getting shot at again. So let's just cut a deal and figure a way to deal with these guys later on. And you know, I don't know. I don't know what the future hides for us, but all I know is the people of Sudan and all of us are not giving up anytime soon. Anytime soon. We'll continue to make donations, we'll continue to collect funds, we'll continue to treat our young men and women if needed, and hopefully it doesn't become needed. The people of Sudan will continue to be on the streets. And even today, July 13th, this is 40 days after June 30. And for people in Sudan, 40 days after the death of a loved one is a very significant day. So this was again called for by just the street, social media. And people are out on the streets. If you look at social media, in thousands. And the people of Sudan knew what they're able to do. So regardless of where things head out from here, I'm optimistic, I have to say. Personally, I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic because of the people of Sudan, not because we're able to shake hands with a thug like Hemeti, not because we have a chance to start a government now, which can be semi-civilian, but I'm optimistic because of the people of Sudan and what we can do together, and what we have achieved together so far is not, it's almost impossible. When you hear people like someone from the UN Human Rights, something, when you hear them talk about the revolution in Sudan and they call it, this is like nothing we've seen in recent history. And how the people of Sudan managed to keep this peaceful, non-violent for this long, and knowing exactly what to do, even when things looked so confusing and so scary and so uncertain, still the people of Sudan found a way to make things right. So if you go on to the next slide, please. This is not the end of the story. So, as I said, we still need to provide support. And when I say support, I talk about all these things. We need to stay engaged. We cannot afford to go back to our life as usual before the revolution and forget about Sudan. And for all our friends here, we cannot afford to lose your support, your engagement, your advocacy for Sudan, your support to us here, on the people of Sudan, directly. This is what got us to this point. We need to apply pressure on our politicians here in the US and to everyone who lives in a free country where politicians listen or can listen. We need to take action. Tweets are good, but action is even better. We need to continue to spread awareness about Sudan in our circles of friends, neighborhoods, at our jobs. We need to tell people, because the story of Sudan is so beautiful. If you get any access to a media channel, if you have contacts in the media, look for opportunities to talk about Sudan. And you don't have to be perfect. I know we're all learning this, but we have to keep it up. We cannot stop here. Get organized, because that's something that we realized very clearly, that we are not as organized as other communities. And when we needed to be organized, we scrambled to get organized, and guess what? It doesn't work. If you're trying to have an exit plan during an emergency, that's not the time to plan. The time to plan is when you can't do it. So even though it's stressful now, I think we still should spend time on organizing our jariyas, our communities, and have a structure to these things, have access to local politicians, have access to other communities that can support us in time of need. And be one. I know it's not easy to be one. It's not easy. We all have different opinions. And if I get 3 or 4 people and ask them a question about one thing, you get 3 different answers. So it's not easy, but we have to do it for our country. We have to do it for our people, for our generations, for our future generations. We have to get past the differences. And of course, we have to support our people and your friends in Sudan in any way you can. Donate money, time, effort, and if we all take a promise to do one thing every day to tell the story of Sudan, if we take a promise that I'll spend an hour every day just doing something productive for Sudan, instead of just circulating messages and videos and chatting to friends who already know about Sudan. If we do that all, or some of us do this, at some point we'll have the world know even more about Sudan. Alhamdulillah, we're in a better place than we used to be at the beginning of this, begging for media coverage and tagging Anderson Cooper, CNN, New York Times, and no one cares. Now we have celebrities talking about Sudan. We have Rihanna, we have Hassan Minhaj, we have many really good people who care about humans. And it doesn't make a difference. The reason we collected over $400,000 in donations versus the 100K that we used to collect back in December and January is because we have all the attention. If I show you the list of donors, you'll see 10 non-Sudanese names before you see a Sudanese name, and so on. So I think we are at a point where we can really start working to change the image of Sudan. It's a lot of work, but it's not easy. But it's doable, right? So I know there are actions beyond this quick list that I put together, but find your own way of supporting and helping Sudan. And I'm sure we're winning, inshallah. We're winning at the end of the day. And to all of you again, thank you very much for your support. To all our friends who are here today to know about Sudan and to support us, really thank you. This is so meaningful, beyond words can describe. And to all our people in Sudan, you're not alone. You're not alone. We're here to support you. We're with you. Our friends are with you. And inshallah, we are winning at the end of the day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Let's give him another round of applause. Thank you for the breakdown of everything that's happening in our beloved country. It's 6:50, so we're a little behind schedule. We will take some questions for those who have any for the next 10-15 minutes, but we also want to be respectful of everyone's time, since we said the event will end at 7. So with that, if people have questions, we can bring the mic to you, and the question can be to any of our panelists, Dr. Bكرى, Ali, Amir, الملك, or Ms. Gail. Does anyone have any questions?
Hi, my name is Haifa Ahmed. This question is directed to all the panel. What do you think the role of religion is going to be after, after the revolution is over, when we get a democracy? What do you think the role of religion will be?
Maybe if we can have you guys sit back on the table, it'll be easier for everyone.
If you remember the so-called civil rights movement, I want you to imagine a people, in this case African Americans, going up against an entire infrastructure of Ku Klux Klan. The governor is KKK, the legislature is KKK, the judges are KKK, the police officers are KKK. I'm talking about an entire infrastructure that was Ku Klux Klan. And these are people who have no, weapons or anything like that. And these people disarmed the state. They disarmed them. And what I'm saying is that the most powerful weapon that they use is the same weapon that you have to use. That's the weapon of faith. Whenever you go up against a material power, You have to have something more powerful than the material. If you stay within the realm of the material, well, they got you. You don't have what they have. But if you go beyond the material to the spiritual, now you can disarm them. Faith is everything. It's everything. Whether you're Christian, whether you're Jewish, whether you're Muslim, faith is everything. And if you allow them to get you away from faith, then you are actually, it's only a matter of time before you will be defeated. Because they are more powerful materialistically. The last thing is, one of the challenges that will have to be made is, the people who do take power to run the country, they will be dealing with the same type of temptation that the current people are dealing with. Power. And who are the people in history who never, ever became corrupted when they had state power? The prophets. You can't name one prophet, peace be upon them all, who when they had state power ever became corrupted. You cannot name one. Moses had state power, peace be upon him. Joseph, Yusuf had state power, peace be upon him. Suleiman, Solomon, and David were both kings. And then the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, they all had state power. Not one prophet ever became corrupt. So what is about their management style? What is it about their leadership style that kept them from becoming corrupt? The new leaders in Sudan will have to follow that leadership style. Because if they don't, when they get that power, they'll become corrupted too. Faith is everything.
I don't think I can add much more to this answer. But Helfa, from the perspective of Sudan, let me tell you this. I know for a fact that religion will not be a line of division for us anymore. Inshallah. And it's up to all of us to make sure that this happens.
I believe that faith or religion can be one source of strength. I believe that people who have a commitment to justice and peace, that it does not have to come from a religious faith, but from, somebody could call it a spiritual faith or just really, really, really strong values. I am propelled, I am Jewish, and I did learn a lot of teachings from that, but I'm not a religious person, but I'm a person who has strong values, and I believe somebody who has no particular religion can be a strong leader for justice, and they might not be compromised, and people of religion can be compromised. So and I so believe in the diversity and the religions coming together, and I really like what you said about diversity.
Thank you for the whole panel for a very nice discussion. Specific thanks to Dr. Bakri for a great presentation, and overall all the revolution happened in Sudan. I just have a question specific for Bakri regarding to us as a community outside Sudan. What is the next steps that we can contribute to this stage now for the revolution, and what is the plan that is in place that we can move forward and help our sister and brother and people in Sudan.
Thank you. I think this is a very important question. We all and each need to know how we can help. And I'll offer a few suggestions. I'm sure there's 1,000 ways we can help. One thing that we know is something that we need to support is the families that lost a loved one. Even though part of what we did with your donations was supporting some of these families, the kind of support that we have done so far, because honestly, we did not know how much we will need to spend on medical care. And we did not want to be in a position where we will have a patient waiting for an operation and we will not have money to support that. So we focused almost entirely and spent about 30 to 35K on families that lost a loved one. But these families have real needs. Some families lost a father. Some families, someone was killed and left a pregnant wife who was expecting to give birth. Some of these families lost the oldest son in the family who was in final year of college and who was expected to graduate and get a job and support. And there's so much need out there. And you know what, most of these families, if you go and ask them, how can we help you? You know, it's amazing that their answer almost always seems to be, you know what, why don't you check other families? I think we're good. They all say that. It's like almost a unanimous answer. Everyone says, regardless of their conditions, they say, alhamdulillah, we're good. Check the other guys. They may need more help than us. So I think it's up to us to really not drop the ball. And when the political bickering starts about this minister or that prime minister, not to forget these people, because you know their suffering is real. They continue to live without a loved one. So just that loss is sad enough. So we don't want them to deal with having to provide income that they lost. So that's one thing. The other thing that I would advise that we all do, each of us have a power to change things, whether we trust that or not. Even a post on social media can make a difference. Even a share on social media can make a difference. So when I said keep engaged, I think being engaged is to be truly meaningful in what you do and be thoughtful of the implications of what you say and what you do. Once we have a government, and inshallah this will be soon, they will need all the help because we're not putting politicians in power. We're trying something different this time, inshallah. We are putting technocrats, people who know what they're doing in terms of a job. They may not have the political depth to fight the fights with the military, but we need to support them. Even we may disagree with some of the things that they do, because guess what? They're learning like we are learning. I've never really done so many live broadcasts in my life, and it's awkward and it's not comfortable, right? But you know, I saw the value of what that can do, and I saw the difference that it can make. So you don't have to be comfortable with it. You don't have to be okay doing it. But if it has an impact, just do it, you know. Call people in Sudan, show them that you're supporting. Call the offices of these new ministers and this new administration. Tell them that you can support. If you're in IT, and I know a lot of us here are in IT, ask them what systems they need for their department. Ask them what software they need. Ask them how you can support. And as I said, organize. If you organize, if you have an organization that can provide consultation to ministries and to the government overall, I think that's going to be very powerful and needed in Sudan, because we're not starting from scratch. Unfortunately, we're starting from beyond scratch. And there's a lot of work that needs to happen. So I'm sure there are other ways that we can support, but just the fact that we want to support, I think we really have to make sure that that power stays, that willingness stays.
Can we do one more question? I don't need a mic if that's okay. Can you hear me okay?
Excellent points made. Thank you so much. It's especially for people who are not from Sudan and who are more allies. This is definitely a good education for us. One thing I've been seeing in this whole discussion is the irony of the people that we're supposed to protect, who are the women and the children, the youth. They're the ones who are in the front line. So beyond the support that we are going to be able to provide through donations and stuff, how do we change that rhetoric so we have more women leaders or more youth who are forming the laws or forming the government in time as well? Because at the end of the day, all these regimes change, you know, new government comes with new promises, but mostly it's pretty much the same people making the decisions. So how do you change that?
I think that's.
I'll take a chance at answering this, and then I'll let the other two panelists try. I think one thing I know for sure is the pro-democracy movement is taking a mindful decision that, and they announced it, 40% of the membership of the parliament, at least 40% has to be women. So that is announced, it's out there. If they don't commit to that, we will make them commit. Sudanese women will make them commit, right? So 40% is a good start. It's not, compared to what we have now, it's a good start. And I tell you, throughout the history of Sudan, women have been judges, they have been in the parliament, not as much as we would like them to be. And I tell you, if we had a woman leader, I'm sure we'll not be talking about genocide, we'll not be talking about that for right now. I always say this, and you know, for some reason, women as leaders are more reasonable than us. We can get crazy. Seriously. No, seriously. And don't get upset, please. Because just look at the examples you have in Germany, New Zealand. Look at the women leaders who are leading these countries and what kind of reactions they show. Yeah, exactly. Ethiopia also has a president who's a woman and a prime minister who's a really good guy. Malaysia also has, yes. So the examples are really a lot, and I think the women of Sudan also, I have to say, something you can tell that they know now, that you cannot sit back and ask for it. You have to go for it and you have to get it. Like you've been in the front lines, like you led throughout. When it comes time to lead the government, you cannot say, you know what, I'm good, I'll go back to my life. No, you have to be part of it. You have to fight for it. And don't let the guys take it all away. That's one thing. The other thing is, and I'm sure many of us here have family that we can impact the way people think. Our boys, our girls, we have to really work with them and make sure that they understand, you know, these differences that we assume, and these things that we assume, and I say not in a right way, that women can do certain things and men can do things that women cannot do. I think this is just all yeah, this is not true in any way. If anything, we've seen in the Western world is that women are more capable, if not more, than men in leading some of the things. And I tell you, I've had many bosses who are women, and I've seen the difference. You know, when it comes to ethical behavior, when it comes to just common sense. So it's up to all of us, again, it's up to all of us to make the change in our families, in our communities. I'd really love to see more women involved in Jaliya. You know, I know almost every Sudanese Jaliya, and Jaliya means the local community. There are divisions in most of Jaliya. I'm sure if we have more women leading these bodies, we'll probably have less differences. So, very good question, and I really hope that we'll stick to promises that made and make real changes. And I'll let Gail answer.
We're trying to do it in this country.
I know. I want Sudan to be that template, right?
I would like to add another category. Women, youth, and I want to add another category, the poor. No matter how many degrees you get, no matter how much money is in your bank account, you must identify with the poor. You gotta see things through their lens. Because this is the group who are going to give the most sacrifices? It's the poor. They're going to sacrifice, and this is also the group who have a tendency to be the least compromising. They're not going to compromise. And so I don't care. And you know, in our faith tradition, we always have to think about the poor. After Ramadan, give money to the poor. You know, zakat, give money to the poor. We're always taught to think about the poor. And y'all, just like us, in terms of African Americans, we got people in our families who've been to college, and we got people in our family who are from the streets. One family. Middle class, poor, in one family. We must identify with the poor. And for the new leaders who get in Sudan, as long as they identify with the poor, that will be one of the main factors that will keep them in check and that will keep them honest. We must identify with the poor. So once you have the women, the youth, and the poor, the show is over.
Someone else? Hello, thank you so much to the panelists. I have a question for Ms. Gill actually about since you produced that documentary and the advice on how to make a similar thing in Sudan. Right now there have been few documentaries by BBC and other media outlets. Do you have any vision about any documentary that we can start working on right now that can address all of the issues that have been going on so far, moving forward, to use it as a media weapon kind of thing to attract more attention to the ongoing issue?
Are you talking about a new movie or this movie?
A new movie that is dedicated to Sudan.
Filmmaker.
Not you, in general.
No, meaning,
Anything to focus on in particular when we want to deliver a strong message?
I think that you who know so much about this revolution, that if there were a filmmaker that were interested in doing it, that's all you need. My film is really compelling, I have to say. And it is personal stories. They're interviews, but I definitely think that if somebody isn't already working on it, because it is an amazing story. And, well, now you've got me thinking, oh, well, who can I talk to? But it would be a phenomenal story. So you have to start talking to people who like to think that way. Okay. And if I think of anything, where's David? David, do you have any ideas?
My idea is that the barriers to filmmaking have been lowered, and there are different vehicles and machines that you use.
I think the barriers to filmmaking have been lowered, and there are different vehicles and communication methods that you can use and different people. And you don't have to be that sophisticated in filmmaking. You can find an outlet, there's Netflix and things like that, and just different distribution. So it might even be great to have someone in Sudan who is documenting all this, get together with someone who can produce it and fund it, and you might have a great compelling documentary.
Somebody was saying Rihanna. Rihanna?
Yeah.
Somebody with the means and the interest, you know, that and the connections to artists and filmmakers and whatever. So if you go to people like Rihanna, or if you think of people in the Sudanese who are really compassionate about what's going on in Sudan, people like Rihanna, or I don't know who else is famous that is, but you want to think in the direction of people who have the most power to make things like this happen and have money.
I agree too. It's got to come from Sudanese eyes. It's got to come from Sudanese eyes.
Right.
Very, very critical. And like, as I said too, that there are people who will support that. There are people who support it, you know what I'm saying? And I want to say to the youth here, you are in the most technologically advanced country in the world. Get something. Get something. Get some type of technology. So if you see that, you know, your thing is going to want to be like filmmaking, study filmmaking. Study filmmaking. You know what I'm saying? Now, I've seen it. I've seen it with my own eyes. Brothers and sisters who are over here in this country, and their country went through a revolution, and guess where those brothers and sisters went after they got their degrees? Back home. They took that technology back home. The technology was in their hand, the faith was in their heart. Don't let it be the other way around. Don't put the technology in your heart and the faith in your hand, because you'll throw away your faith. You know what I'm saying? Throw away your faith. So make sure the faith is in your heart, technology is in your hand, but get some technology. What do you need? Everything. We need everything. So yeah, so I think that's a good idea, but it should come from Sudanese eyes.
Thank you.
We can take more questions. We have the place. I just want to be respectful of you guys' time and everyone else who has other commitments. So like, can you take a few more questions?
Just one more.
Okay, so this is kind of going back to, your question. So about what to focus on. So just like an idea would be similar to your movie, Faces of Genocide. We can probably interview people from different areas of Sudan because as we have talked before, it's very diverse. But I think the majority of us who live outside of Sudan and just even in this room are Sudanese Arabs, and we don't talk to people from Darfur much or from other parts of Sudan or even South Sudan. So it might be a better idea to even just like talk to other people of Sudan and see their perspective on what's going on and what they have been through and what they have suffered from Omar al-Bashir.
السلام عليكم. معلش انا ما حضرت جزء كبير من الايفنت لانه احنا ذاتنا كنا في اوكلاند مشاركين مع بعض الرجال الاريتريه عندهم كونفرنس وتكلمنا عن lessons learned from the Sudanese revolution. And I think this is part of excuse me? I'm speaking in English. So anyway, I think that's part of the way that we can get engaged. I don't know if the brother here spoke about how we can get the Black communities here in the Bay Area to be engaged and involved and also educated about the Sudan Revolution and be part of it. Because I think the Black communities here and the African American communities have been a big part of the fighting the apartheid in South Africa. A lot of international causes that they've been involved and engaged in it. And part of it is also the campaign to divest from the companies and organizations that are engaged in genocide and in atrocities all over Africa. So I just want the brother to enlighten us on this, and I don't know if he already spoke about this because, like I said, I didn't attend a big part of the event because I was engaged in another event. Thank you.
I think we need to do more work with respect to non-Muslim African Americans, in that the African American Muslims, we already have a connection with the Sudan, but it has to go beyond that. As you said, we're involved in that struggle. I was heartened to see, we're looking through the film, the things, they had a 1 million man march in the Sudan, you know what I'm saying? So there is a connection that we do have, but it has to go beyond African American Muslims. Because as you said, there's other movements that we've been a part of, you know what I'm saying, that I think we could really help. I remember there was a delegation that went from here to the Sudan on a fact-finding mission sponsored by MANA, the Muslim Alliance of North America, which is an African American, national African American Muslim organization, so on and so forth. And so that dialogue and that interaction is there, but it has to go beyond that. It's got to go beyond that, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. We would like to know from Bakri what is happening, what is going on nowadays between قوى الحرية والتغيير والمجلس العسكري الانتقالي by the end of the يعني النزوة. ممكن لأنك أنت يعني أدرى وعندك يعني معلومات أكثر فكلنا يعني we are very interested to know what is going on now, right now. وشكرا.
So, I'll try. There is a misconception out there that we're inside this. And I gotta tell you, I hear this a lot from Muslims, right, who's supporting this work from inside. So the way we're supporting the revolution doesn't come with any strings attached, with any access to leadership or any special know-how or news, and it's not about this. But I have to say, we're in touch with different parts of the leadership, mainly because of the work that we do. And you get to ask questions, just like you just asked a question. So what's happening? And I say just from these random questions, what I'm hearing is things are making progress, things are going forward, and there is a deal pretty close. And I hope it becomes a deal that paves the way for real change, because there's a lot of people who, even today, say if we can put out millions on the streets, why do we even have to have negotiations with the military council? And I cannot say that view is wrong. I just think that it has costs associated with it, and we have to know that. So the one thing that we had a discussion today with Saeed here and other friends about Freedom, Force and Change, FFC, and how they're representing us, and they don't really have all the support that need to navigate what is happening in terms of, look at the TMC. They have all the offices, they have the big screens projecting their meetings, they have the presidential palace, everything. They have the petrodollars in the bank, and those guys, they don't even have staff, they don't have offices. One of the guys from one of the nonviolent experts was talking to us about something else, and he was asking the question, so where are the offices of the SPA? And I said, these guys don't have any offices. They go back home at the end of it. They don't have offices, they don't have fax machines. So just thinking about the conditions that they're operating under, and I know we have a lot of discussions that why and why not, But you know, until you're in that room and until you're facing what these guys are facing, and until you know what they know exactly, because I don't think we know everything, and I think this will be taught with time, inshallah. But I think we have to put our trust in who we chose as our leadership and who is representing us. The one thing that I have to say I'm looking forward to is the names of the leaders of the next phase, inshallah. And I said this before, we need strong leaders. We need leaders who can stand up to MAP and to the TMC and say, you know what, no, this is not the way you want it this way, but this is not the way it's happening.
God, inshallah.
Yes, inshallah, inshallah. That's what will get us there, inshallah. So, the short answer is I don't have any classified information. And, exactly, and you know what, I trust these people. I trust that they're doing their best, inshallah.
The reality though, is that they're going to try to take a few groups, a few among this group, and basically say to them, we'll share what we have, you. That's what they're going to do. We'll share what we have with you, right? But again, as long as the women, the youth, and the poor are in the mix, right? It'll give them more power to demand, and it'll also ensure that they don't take that group and immediately co-opt them. The women, the youth, and the poor. And so that's why they have to be kept, the women, youth, and the poor have to be kept informed. This is what's up. This is what's going on. And they have to say, what do y'all think? What do y'all think? Here's what they're talking about. Here's what we said. What do y'all think? Every day during the Civil Rights Movement, Dr. King and them would have a meeting at the church. And they would have a rally at the church. And they would ask the women, the youth, and the poor, here's where we're at. Do you want to continue with it? Yeah, we continue with it. All right, we'll go with that. Or here's what we negotiated today with them. Here's what they said. Here's what they're offering. What do you all think? It's got to be like that. It's got to be like that. It's got to be transparency. And as long as there's transparency like that, then the revolution will take a very positive course.
This is not a question. This is a comment on the role of religion in Sudan. God loved us before He created us, before He brought us to this beautiful world, and He wanted us to love each other. We need to love each other. We need to respect each other. We need to understand each other. That is the solution, I think. Not for Sudan, for all over the world.
Hi, my name is Hadith. So I had a question regarding organizing at the university level, at the post-secondary level. So from what I know as a college student, or the people that are college students, a lot of the most powerful movements in all parts of the world come from university students, whether it's the organizing and Jamaat al-Khartoum, way back in the day, or now in the present. So as I think kids in the diaspora or here in the US, we're not insiders, as you say, and we don't have the same kind of access to the insider knowledge of people that have lived in Sudan. So I think my question is, how do we organize on our college campuses and do things in a way that is still kind of consistent with the need, how do we serve the needs of the people here who have different lives, who have different experiences as Sudanese Americans or Sudanese outside, and also not remain I think cut off from the people back home. So to anybody, that will answer.
Thank you very much, Haneen. This is a very good question, and I'm really glad to see where you're thinking and where you're heading with this. So we have been in isolation for too long. Sudan has been in isolation for too long, and inshallah, this is coming to an end. The isolation is coming to an end. So I'm really hopeful for the day when we see partnership between schools in Sudan and schools here in America and all over the world. I'm hopeful for a day when we see Stanford University sending, I don't know, exchange students to Sudan, or opening the door for exchange students from Sudan to come here. And if that's not happening, it's your role to push for it with your school. And it's your role also, I think, to reach out to your counterparts in Sudan and make sure that you have that discussion, because you know what, they all have aspirations to connect. And they all have aspirations to know what they don't know, because sadly, the state of higher education in Sudan is not something to be proud of. You know, I think there's a lot that needs to be done, and partnerships with big schools in the West and all over the world is very important. We should push for that. We should push our schools here, not just schools, but even companies. I mean, a lot of the companies who are looking for markets, fresh markets, they will open in Sudan, inshallah, soon. So we should not just make that a one-sided transaction, not just let Google or Facebook or this company, that company go into Sudan without offering something for the benefit of the people of Sudan. We should always make it clear that yes, you can have access to our markets, you can have access to our people, but what are we getting in return? And I hope that the government will also have the mindfulness to make sure that we have these opportunities for support and for cooperation and for not just opening our markets, but actually getting something in return. And all these companies, they have their social responsibility departments, they're looking for ways to help. So it's a big question, but I'm sure there are things that you can do at your level with your school. Reach out to people in Sudan. If you need help with that, I'm sure many in this crowd can help you. And inshallah, we look for a day when we have normal relations with all the world, that someone from Sudan can go and present in conferences all over the world, and we can host conferences inside Sudan for experts to come and talk about subjects and so on. So, good question. Thank you very much,
And let other Sudanese brothers and sisters know who they are. Seriously, you know, I be looking at some Sudanese brothers and sisters, man, do y'all know who you are? When the brother was talking about earlier the history of the Sudan and so on and so forth, it's like, do y'all know where y'all come from? Like the legacy that you're a part of, you know what I'm saying? And so, identity, and then the other aspect is, see, as African Americans, because of the slavery thing, we're taught to get our technology and bring it back to the hood. Because we don't really like have a country, you know what I'm saying? Well, y'all got a country. You know what I'm saying? Get your technology with the intention of taking it back to your country and helping out in some way. So we're helping to revive who they are. Do you know what's happening in Sudan right now? Like, get them going. This is what's happening. So spreading that awareness among the Sudanese brothers and sisters to awaken their identity and their sense of responsibility, and then sharing what's happening to the, in the Sudan to other Muslims and non-Muslims. The MSA, the Muslim Student Association, should know what's happening in the Sudan. You know what I'm saying? So get with the MSAs and get with them, the BSUs, the Black Student Unions, should know what's going on in the Sudan. You know what I'm saying? And so those types of things. So the Sudanese brothers and sisters, as well as the other Muslim brothers and sisters, as well as the non-Muslim brothers and sisters. But make sure you make that connection too with the African Americans who are there. That's part of that process. You know what I'm saying, on the campus level. You feel me?
Assalamu alaikum, Muhammad Said. My question is to Dr. Ali. Are you aware about any effort to bring all the initiatives, this has been being started by the Sudanese American here in the U.S., like initiatives like Sudan Next Gen, or bring all the organizations that's been actively involved in during this revolution, and everyone trying to participate somehow, like CB, SAP, UCANA, etc. Are you aware about any efforts to bring all of these initiatives and organizations, and also the local communities, the Sudanese communities, to work together under one umbrella so we can unify our message, coordinate our efforts in communicating with the leadership here in this country, and try to bring everyone together under one umbrella.
Thank you, Mohammed Ismail. This is a good question. I think the key word here is coordinate. I don't think it's bringing every effort under one umbrella. I don't think we necessarily have to work under one umbrella, but we definitely have to coordinate, and we definitely have to orchestrate our efforts and try and avoid duplication and try and unify our message as much as possible, because it's not easy. Even with all the work that we're doing, it's not easy for one person to cover the entire spectrum of what's happening in Sudan. For example, SAMA can cover the health and medical part of it. University of Khartoum Alumni Association, UCANA, they have more diversity within there. And they're also working on starting their own advocacy branch, which is good. I hope it happens quicker. Next Gen, Sudan Next Gen is another awesome effort that's coming along, and they're making this platform which will allow experts from all around the world to put their plans and ideas in one place that the government in Sudan can access and can see and can say, you know what, that plan dealing with natural gas, I think we need to look at that, and can we have access to the experts behind that plan? So, and they're working in full coordination with the FFC and the SPA, which is good. You really have to start these efforts in good collaboration. So I think the coordination part is really needed. It's not happening as it should be at this point. But again, when I said organize, and organize today, because once we get past that initial stage of organizing and having a stable entity, and not have to worry about all the membership questions and all the filings and all this noise, once you get to the actual mission, I think many things will become clear. And it's becoming clear to us in UCANA right now, even though we're still dealing with the organizing part of things, but it's becoming clear to us how we can have an impact and how we can be thought leaders, not just react to events. So there's a lot of work that needs to happen, and I think we're relatively new to this compared to other communities, but I think we're learning every day, and I hope we take that learning and turn it into action, not just keep it, or just, as I said before, go back to life as normal before this happened. We really need to be engaged and advocate for Sudan and be part of something and bring our expertise, our knowledge, our education, and put it at the help of the next government. So what I would advise everyone here is to find out. I know there's a lot of graduates of University of Khartoum in this crowd, but I'm not sure is everyone part of UCANA or not. So reach out, find out how do you become a member. Sudan Next Gen is another awesome thing, as I said. So find out the people behind this and be part of it and see how you can help. So I hope this answers it, but coordination is key and it's very important. Thank you.
I hate to do this as well, but we have to end. Thank you so much for everyone. I'm going to do a quick announcement and then closing remarks. We are selling t-shirts in the back. Stand with Sudan, blue, and they're unisex. Ayman will be in the back selling them. They're $10 per shirt. Every $4 goes to Sudan. So out of the 10, 40% goes to Sudan. We will have an email list up here for those who are interested in the Faces of Genocide movie that we weren't able to show the trailer for earlier. If you're interested in it, please sign up. Put your name and email so we can send you the movie once we get it. And lastly, we have refreshments in the back. Please help yourselves. And with that, this concludes our event for the night and presentation. Thank you so much. Let's give a round of applause to our panelists. So you can just write your email directly with Gail at the table, and then they can send them an invitation to watch the movie. Wait. I need to, wait. Can everyone just give me 10, I waited for all the questions. Everyone has to sit down and we're gonna wrap it up officially, okay? We have a few gifts that we wanted to present to our panelists. Thank you so much again for your support. We really appreciate it. Please keep to continue the people of Sudan in your prayers. And before we end the night, if I can ask our teacher, Amir, الملك, to end us in prayer. If that's okay? All right.
إلى الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر.
All right, thank you guys. Have a great night. Get refreshments in the back.